Across the windswept deserts of the Middle East, the frozen shores of the North Atlantic, and the bustling coasts of the Mediterranean, lie the spectral remains of once thriving communities. These are the lost cities of early Christianity, places where the faith took root, blossomed, and then, for reasons as varied as war, climate change, and the shifting sands of history, vanished from the map. Today, archaeologists are brushing away the dust of ages, and what they're finding is challenging everything we thought we knew about the first followers of Jesus. Let's journey to these lost cities and hear the stories they're finally ready to tell. Our first stop takes us to eastern Syria, to a city on the banks of the Euphrates River called Dura Europos. This was once a bustling caravan city and Roman garrison, a true religious melting pot, but in 256 AD its life was extinguished. Besieged by the Sasanian Empire, Roman soldiers made a desperate decision to fortify the city walls. They did this by burying all the buildings along the city's edge, under a massive earthen rampart. This act of defense inadvertently created a time capsule, preserving a synagogue, a temple to the god Mithras, and what is now considered the earliest known Christian church. For decades, this building was thought to be a simple private home, converted for worship, a so-called house church. But recent analysis of the structure, which dates to around 232 AD, reveals something far more deliberate. Walls were knocked down to create a large assembly hall for prayer and the Eucharist. Another room was transformed into a dedicated baptistry, complete with stunning frescoes. This wasn't a family just opening their home for prayer. It was a community publicly redesigning a building for a sacred purpose, a bold statement of faith in an era before Christianity was even legalized. The frescoes are among the most significant finds, acting as a visual guide for new converts. We see some of the earliest surviving depictions of biblical scenes: Christ as the Good Shepherd, Adam and Eve, David and Goliath, and Jesus healing the paralytic. The themes focus on salvation and deliverance, giving us profound insight into the core beliefs of a community living on a precarious frontier. Dura Europos shows us that long before it became the religion of emperors, Christianity wasn't always a hidden, persecuted sect. In some places, it was an established and visible part of a diverse urban landscape, preserved for us by the very violence that destroyed it. From the Roman frontier, we travel south into the arid landscape of Israel's Negev desert, to the sprawling ruins of Shivta. This wasn't a fortress, but a large, unwalled agricultural settlement that thrived during the Byzantine period. Its inhabitants were masters of water collection, allowing them to make the desert bloom with farms, wine presses, and 3 grand churches. But after the early Islamic conquest, the city gradually declined. By the 8th or 9th century, it was abandoned, its story slowly buried by the desert sands. Archaeologists have worked at Shivta for decades, but new technology has brought faint traces of art back to life. High on the apse of the North Church baptistry, art historians identified the fragmentary remains of a wall painting depicting the baptism of Jesus. But the face of Christ is startling. It's not the long-haired, bearded figure common in Western art. This Jesus, dated to the 6th century, is a youth with short curly hair, large eyes, and a long nose. This portrait belongs to an older tradition from Egypt and Syro-Palestine that depicted Christ as a young man, symbolizing baptism as a spiritual rebirth. It is the first scene of Christ's baptism from before the iconoclastic controversies to be found in the Holy Land. Elsewhere in the city, modern imaging has helped identify a faded painting of the Transfiguration. These finds open a window into the unique artistic and theological world of Byzantine Palestine. They're a powerful reminder that the image of Christ was not always uniform, and that regional communities developed their own distinct ways of visualizing their faith. Next, we journey to the cradle of Christian monasticism, the deserts of Egypt. In the remote Bahariya oasis, archaeologists have unearthed what is now believed to be the oldest preserved Christian monastic site in the world. The site, known as Tal Ganub Qasr al-Aguz has been securely dated by radiocarbon analysis to have been occupied from as early as the mid-4th century AD. This complex, which saw its peak in the 5th and 6th centuries, gives us a blueprint for early monastic life. It's a cluster of hermitages known as a lavra, consisting of 6 sectors with 3 churches, individual cells for monks, and communal areas. The buildings were cleverly constructed from basalt and mud brick, with some rooms carved directly into the bedrock. But the most fascinating part is what the monks left on the walls. They are covered with graffiti, Coptic symbols, and most importantly, religious inscriptions and biblical passages written in Greek. These texts are helping scholars understand the nature of monastic spirituality and literacy in this very early period. They also found ostraca, pottery shards with writing, including a fragment of a letter from a monk discussing his studies in Constantinople. This reveals a community that, while remote, was still connected to the wider Christian world. Evidence of wine production and animal husbandry also shows how they sustained themselves. This lost desert outpost is rewriting the history of how the first monastic communities were organized, revealing a resilient and structured faith thriving in one of the world's harshest environments. Let's now travel north to a secluded plateau in northeastern Turkey, bordering Armenia. Here lie the hauntingly beautiful ruins of Ani. In the 10th and 11th centuries, Ani was a magnificent metropolis, the capital of the Bagratid Armenian kingdom, and was known as the city of 1001 churches. It was a vital hub on the Silk Road, a city whose wealth and importance rivaled Constantinople. Ani's decline was a long and tragic story. A Seljuk conquest in 1064, followed by Mongol invasions, a devastating earthquake, and the shifting of global trade routes all contributed to its gradual abandonment. By the 17th century, it was a ghost city. Today, this UNESCO World Heritage Site is slowly revealing its secrets. Excavations have uncovered over 40 churches, chapels, and mausoleums so far. The architecture is breathtaking. The Cathedral of Ani, completed in the year 1001, is a work of genius. Some scholars even suggest its pointed arches and clustered piers predate the development of Gothic architecture in Europe. The city also tells a story of religious coexistence and conflict. When the Seljuks conquered Ani, the cathedral was temporarily converted into a mosque, a powerful symbol of the changing tides of power. The ruins of Ani are more than just stones. They are a poignant memorial to a lost Christian kingdom and a crucial center of culture and faith at the crossroads of empires. From a lost capital, we move to a world-famous site, but one with a forgotten Christian story: Ephesus, on the western coast of Turkey. In the Roman Empire, Ephesus was a major port and cultural hub, renowned for its Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But it was also a critical center for the spread of early Christianity. The Apostle Paul lived and ministered here for 3 years. The Apostle John is said to have lived here as well. It's the city whose church was rebuked for having lost its first love in the book of Revelation. You can walk the same marble streets as Paul and John, stand in the grand amphitheater where a riot was incited against Paul's teachings, and admire the magnificent library of Celsus. But what happened to this Christian stronghold? Its end came not by the sword, but by nature. The harbor, the city's lifeblood, slowly silted up, cutting it off from the sea. This, combined with earthquakes and raids, led to its final abandonment by the 15th century. One of the most significant Christian discoveries here is the Church of the Virgin Mary, a massive basilica that was the site of the Third Ecumenical Council in 431 AD. This pivotal meeting solidified the doctrine of Mary as the Theotokos, or God-bearer. The church itself was built over an earlier Roman civic building, symbolizing the triumph of the new faith. Nearby, the Apostle John's tomb is believed to lie beneath the ruins of a grand basilica built in his honor. Ephesus is a powerful reminder of one of the most important Christian cities of the Apostolic Age, a place that shaped the faith's doctrine before slowly succumbing to the forces of nature. Returning to Syria, we find a different kind of lost community in the limestone hills of the northwest. Here lie the Dead Cities, a collection of some 700 abandoned settlements dating from the 1st to the 7th centuries. These villages weren't wiped out by a single disaster. They were gradually abandoned between the 8th and 10th centuries after the Arab conquest shifted trade routes and administrative centers, leading to their slow economic decline. The well-preserved ruins of houses, churches, and monasteries offer an unparalleled look into rural Byzantine life. The crown jewel of this region is Kholat Seyman, the Church of St. Simeon Stylites. This vast architectural complex was built in the late 5th century to commemorate Saint Simeon, an ascetic monk who became famous for living for some 40 years atop a pillar. He did this to distance himself from worldly affairs and draw closer to God. After his death, his pillar became a powerful relic, and a magnificent church was built around it. The structure consists of 4 basilicas radiating from a central octagon that housed the pillar itself. For centuries, Kholat Seyman was one of the most important pilgrimage destinations in the Christian world. The surrounding towns grew rich, serving the thousands of pilgrims who flocked to the site. The Dead Cities and Kholat Seyman reveal a form of Christianity deeply rooted in asceticism and the veneration of saints, a faith that literally shaped the landscape before fading into history. Tragically, this incredible site has suffered damage in the recent Syrian conflict, a heartbreaking echo of the past. Finally, our story takes us to the icy fringes of the known medieval world. Around the year 1000 AD, the Norse Vikings converted to Christianity, and they carried their new faith with them on their daring voyages across the North Atlantic. They established settlements in Greenland, building farms and churches that stood for hundreds of years. The best preserved of these is Havalzi Church, whose sturdy stone walls still stand today. It was here that the last written record of the Greenlandic Norse was ever made, a letter documenting a wedding in September 1408. After that, a mysterious silence. The entire Norse population of Greenland vanished by the mid-15th century. Why? The reasons are still debated, but a combination of a cooling climate known as the Little Ice Age, conflicts with the incoming Thule people, the collapse of the walrus ivory trade, and growing isolation from Europe all likely played a part. But the Norse journey didn't end there. At Landsaw Meadows, on the northern tip of Newfoundland, Canada, archaeologists unearthed the only confirmed Norse settlement in North America, predating Columbus by almost 500 years. Radiocarbon dating has precisely timed their activity at the site to the year 1021 AD. While no specific church building has been found among the turf-walled structures, the Vikings who founded this short-lived colony, like Leif Erikson, were Christians. It's highly probable one of the buildings served as a space for worship. This small, failed colony represents the furthest and most fleeting outpost of medieval Christianity, a lost community at the very edge of the world. From the deserts of Syria to the shores of Newfoundland, these lost cities are more than just ruins. They are vibrant, forgotten chapters in the story of faith. They reveal a Christianity that was far more diverse, adaptable, and regional than we often imagine. Through the patient work of archaeologists and the power of new technology, these ancient communities are speaking to us once again, offering priceless windows into the lives and beliefs of our distant spiritual ancestors. They remind us that history is never truly lost, only waiting to be rediscovered.